Your credit utilization ratio, the percentage of your available credit you're carrying right now, looks completely different in their scoring system than it does in yours. Here's what that means in practice. You've been keeping your credit card balances under 30% of each card's credit limit. Your credit report looks clean. Your FICO score is where you expected, but not as high as it should be, given everything you've done right. That performance gap runs between 20 and 35 points. Available every billing cycle on cards you already own. The 30% threshold isn't the optimization target, it's the damage boundary. Every major FICO credit score grades utilization in bands, 5 of them, and at 30%, you're in band 3. Not penalized, not optimal, the acceptable middle. The threshold that separates preferred borrowers from standard borrowers in the lender's scoring model isn't 30, it's 7. 1 to 7% per card is the range where the algorithm scores utilization at its maximum contribution to your credit score. Not under 30, not under 20, not under 10. 7. That number isn't in any standard credit advice you've read. By the end of this, you'll understand the full band architecture and how to position inside the top tier. And in the third section, I'll show you the specific point difference between 28% and 3%, a gap most credit advice has never named. Here's where the 30% rule came from and why it spread to every credit advice resource that exists. FICO's scoring algorithm applies a material negative modifier to utilization above 30% per card. Below that threshold, the penalty doesn't activate. That's the factual basis for the advice. Below 30%, your utilization factor isn't taking a visible hit. Every major consumer credit resource took that threshold, the point where penalties start, and repackaged it as the goal. The rule is technically correct. Below 30%, you're not penalized. But that's where the explanation stopped. Not because the information was being withheld, because stay under 30% was accurate enough to be useful, and the full explanation requires something that simple advice doesn't, showing that there are 5 scoring bands, not 2, and that the threshold consumers were given marks the border between band 3 and band 4. What that means for you right now: you received correct advice, you received incomplete advice. The portion that was left out is 2 tiers above where you've been operating. When a lender pulls your credit file, they're not reading a raw percentage. They're reading a score output that maps your utilization position to a specific risk tier within their internal scoring band architecture. At 28%, that output places you in band 3. The lender's underwriting matrix codes that position as acceptable, functional, not flagged, not preferred. Most lenders also apply a lender overlay on top of the base credit score. Proprietary criteria that respond to how your score was composed, not just what it is. An underwriting matrix with 9 internal tiers doesn't treat a 720 from someone at 4% the same as a 720 from someone at 27%. The number is identical. The band composition that produced it is not. I followed the under 30 guidance for years. I kept my balances at 22, 24%, occasionally lower. I thought I was doing what the algorithm rewards. What I hadn't been shown, 2 scoring tiers above where I was operating, reachable on the same cards I already had. The FICO 8 and FICO 9 models, both heavily used in credit card decisions, treat the band architecture the same way on this point. This isn't product-specific or version-specific. The structure holds across the major scoring models, which means the people who know about Band 1 didn't find a workaround. They found how the original model was built. What that means for you right now: the advice optimized for the damage threshold. Band 1 was never part of the consumer-facing explanation. It was built into the model from the beginning. Let's look at what the scoring model actually contains. FICO's utilization scoring doesn't run on a linear scale where less is always proportionally better. It uses a stepped band architecture, specific percentage ranges that each map to a distinct score contribution level. Here's the full structure. This is the part worth writing down. 5 bands. Band 1, 1 to 7% per card. Maximum utilization score contribution. The algorithm reads this range as active, controlled, revolving credit management and scores it at peak output. Band 2, 8 to 20%. Strong. a measurable reduction from the top band in certain profiles, but well above the damage threshold. Band 3, 21 to 30%. Acceptable, below the penalty threshold, and also 23 percentage points from the peak band. Not penalized, not optimal. Band 4, 31 to 50%. Measurable score reduction. The negative modifier activates here and increases with each incremental point above 30. Band 5, above 50%. Significant damage. Utilization becomes one of the primary negative factors and compounds across the full credit file. Most of the people who've been following the 30% rule are in Band 3. That's what the advice produced. Not damage, not optimal. A functional middle position they've been maintaining for years. Here's the mechanical reason per card figures matter more than your total average. FICO scores each card balance against its limit individually. A file with one card at 0% and another at 35% scores differently than both cards at 17%. Same total utilization, different outcome. The 35% card drags the component down regardless of what the other card shows. Now, why 7% specifically rather than 5 or 10 or somewhere else close to 0? At exactly 0% on all revolving accounts, some FICO models interpret this as dormant. The credit line exists but isn't being used. For certain profiles, 0 can produce a marginal reduction compared to 1 to 7% because the model measures active management, not just avoidance. At 1 to 7%, the algorithm reads controlled active use, present but contained. That's the Band 1 signal. Above 7, the step down begins, measurable and consistent across major score versions. I'd understood the lower is better principle for years. The band architecture is what made the target specific. Not a gradient, a structure with defined thresholds. Once you know where they are, the target changes from directional to exact. The scoring model was built for lenders, not borrowers. The band architecture didn't come with a consumer label. The threshold that determines your tier wasn't on your credit card statement. What that means for you right now, Band 3 isn't trouble. It's the functional middle. Moving to Band 1 takes the same action, paying down a balance, with a precise target instead of a direction. What I'm about to show you in the next 90 seconds is the part most people never find. Don't stop here. This is the one that changes what you do next. The point difference between 7% utilization and 28% utilization on the utilization factor alone runs between 20 and 35 points for most standard FICO 8 profiles. 20 to 35 points. On a single scoring factor, you have complete control over every billing cycle. That number matters when you map it to credit tiers. A score of 695 sits at the bottom of the good tier. Lenders approve most standard products from that position, but not at prime rates. A score of 720 sits in the very good tier. At most major lenders, prime rate qualification begins somewhere between 700 and 730, depending on the product. The movement from 695 to 715, the kind of shift that utilization optimization alone can drive on the right profile, crosses that line. What that means for you right now, the points available from moving to Band 1 aren't abstract. They're the points that determine which tier the lender places you in and what rate that tier carries. Here's what the band gap costs in actual numbers. Picture a borrower with a solid credit file, no late payments in the past 3 years, 3 credit cards open for an average of 6 years, no collections, no derogatory marks. Utilization across all 3 cards, 26% each. FICO 8 score, 694. That 694 sits at the bottom of the good tier. Lenders approve most standard products from that position, credit cards, personal loans, auto financing, not at the best available rate. Below it, same borrower, same payment history, accounts, inquiries. They pay each card to 4% before the next statement closing date. One variable. The realistic score shift from moving the utilization factor from Band 3 to Band 1 on this profile runs between 15 and 25 points. FICO scoring is computed holistically. The exact number depends on the full file. But for a profile where utilization is the primary underperforming factor and everything else is clean, a 15 to 25 point gain in a single billing cycle is documented and repeatable. at 709 to 719, this borrower crosses the prime rate qualification threshold at most major lenders. The credit history didn't change. The payment record didn't change. The accounts didn't change. The balance on the closing date of one billing cycle changed. Here's the number that makes this concrete. On a $300,000 30-year fixed mortgage, the rate difference between a 694 score and a 720 score translates to between $35,000 and $55,000 in total interest over the life of the loan. Monthly payment difference, approximately $115 to $130. The structural output of a 15 to 25 point gap applied to standard mortgage rate pricing. The mechanism producing it was a single factor, utilization, that resets every billing cycle and responds immediately. This is the number I described at the beginning. The specific point difference between 28% and 3% applied to a real score and a standard loan. The 30% advice placed you in a position where that gap stays open indefinitely, not because you did something wrong, because the advice was calibrated for the damage threshold, not the optimization tier. The advice wasn't wrong. It was incomplete. It told you where the penalty starts. It didn't tell you where the reward peaks. Those are two different places, and no standard credit education resource connected them. I had a financial decision on the horizon and moved my per-card balances to 4% for the first time. I wasn't following a system yet, I was testing. The score change registered within one billing cycle. I'd been at the acceptable level for years without knowing the peak level was one tier above it. What that means for you right now, nothing you've done has been incorrect. The move from here is the same action, paying down a balance, with a number and a date attached. Here are the 5 specific corrections. Step 1. Find your statement closing date on each credit card account, not the payment due date. Log into each account and look for the field labeled Statement Date, Statement Closing Date, or Billing Cycle End Date. If you can't find it, call the number on the back of the card and ask directly. Your reported utilization is the balance on that day, not whether you paid, not what you owe today, but the balance at the moment that snapshot is sent to the credit bureaus. Pay your balance to the target level before the closing date, not by the due date, before the closing date. Step 2. Calculate the 7% target for each card. Credit limit X 0.07, a $4,000 limit $280 or less, a $6,000 limit $420, an $8,000 limit $560. Specific numbers, not directional targets. Step 3. Pay each card to its 7% target before its closing date. Set a recurring reminder for 3 to 5 days before each card's closing date. A payment that posts after the closing date doesn't change what was already reported. Step 4. Track the per-card figure, not your total average. Each card is scored separately. One card at 40% drags the utilization component down regardless of your other cards. The per-card number is what the model reads, not the aggregate. Step 5. If 7% isn't reachable this cycle, target 20% per card as an intermediate. That moves you from Band 3 to Band 2. Smaller impact than Band 1, but real and immediate. The model reads where you are at each closing date independently. Continue reducing in following cycles. The first billing cycle I targeted 4%, specifically the number moved more than I expected from adjusting one variable. That was the last time 30 was my working target. The gap between people who plateau around 670 and people who break through 730 usually comes down to one number, the utilization target they're actually working toward each billing cycle. Most people targeting 30 are in Band 3. Most targeting 7 are not. What are you currently targeting per card? Drop it below. If you already knew about the 7% threshold before today, tell me how long you've been using it. If this gave you something specific you didn't have before, subscribe. There's more coming. Next, I'm covering how card issuers evaluate credit limit increase requests, specifically what they look for in the 90 days before you ask, and why the utilization figure you're showing during that window determines the outcome more than anything you say in the request. It connects directly to what we just covered. One thing worth understanding about the 7% target, it's a monthly position, not a permanent balance restriction. You don't need to keep your card empty. You need to manage the reported balance, the snapshot sent to the bureaus on the closing date. What happens to your balance between closing dates isn't visible to the scoring model. If your balance climbs to 60% mid-cycle and drops to 5% before the closing date, the bureau receives 5%. The mid-cycle spike doesn't exist in the model's data. That's why utilization responds faster than any other credit factor. No waiting period, no seasoning. You move the balance before the closing date, the model reads the new band position, and the score reflects it the same month. Every billing cycle is a new opportunity to show the model band 1. You know where the band is now.